A warm summer welcome to all our friends. My name is Celeste Chow, the Community Concert Director with the Friends of Maple Grove. The Friends of Maple Grove is excited to present a unique concert by pianist and lecturer David Holtzman entitled Telling a Story and Painting a Picture. David has been hailed as the master pianist and has won acclaim for both his recitals and his recordings. He has given lecture recitals throughout the world. He has focused much of his attention upon the masterworks of the 20th century and has been described as the Horowitz of modern music. We are very honored and lucky to have David perform here today. As with all our events, this program is presented to remember and honor those cared for here at Maple Grove Cemetery. Today's concert has multiple honorees, including Malcolm Manier, a concert pianist, teacher, and organist; Reverend Daniel Picorne and his wife Patricia. Daniel was a Lutheran minister who ministered to the deaf, and Patricia was a specialist for the blind and visually impaired. And lastly, Roger Durnam Hannay was a beloved and noted professor of musical composition at the University of North Carolina and a composer of chamber and opera music. Thank you for your continued support and encouragement. Please help us to continue providing you with exceptional programs and events like today's concert by renewing your membership or by becoming a member of the Friends of Maple Grove. We strive to bring you quality programming as we honor those taken care of at Maple Grove Cemetery. We ask that you remain safe and vigilant until the day we can all gather together at our center in the near future. Thank you.
Okay, hello to all. I think a lot of you know me. I've played and talked at Maple Grove before. I'm happy to be here again. The title of the program is a little difficult, which is basically music telling a story in pictures, in sounds, and not too much music can fit a very narrow category like that. I can come close. A lot of music is what you call abstract music, which means anybody hearing, they're not going to say it's telling a story. It's still great music. And what I want to show you is just, to a little extent, the incredible variety of music you're going to find. I had trouble, the way I always do, thinking of a little way to start, and the way I succeed is I take walks, and that means that then my mind is always going to think backwards, like nostalgia that happened here, and by me nostalgia meant more than 60 years ago. So out of the blue, a piece that probably every pianist my age or younger knows, Swans on the Lake. From the John Thompson book of pianists, and every 5-year-old learns that piece. So I learned it, and if it's called Swans on the Lake, it's supposedly painting a picture, right? And all I'll say in a technical sense is that, you're on a lake because it's in triple time. Everything is rocking. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Beyond that, it's nothing but a piece for children. But out of the blue, I thought of something which I first heard only a couple of years later when I was a student at a good music school. And there was an excellent cellist named Edith Wint who played this piece. Again, you probably know it. Anybody who doesn't know it, that's the swan from Saint-Saëns Carnival of the Animal. Now, would you agree that that's painting a picture? It's not moving very far, it's very sedate and very stately. You still have 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Stand still, but it's a picture. Take it one step further again, I'm thinking of my own great nostalgic childhood. In this case, I'm thinking of my sister Marion. When I was about 6, she was at the Metropolitan Opera and Ballet School. So you better believe that I would be listening to Tchaikovsky at home. Swan Lake. And by the way, without an orchestra, you miss a lot, so do your best. grew up in love with Tchaikovsky. And the only thing I'll say as a professor here, that's not just painting a picture, that's telling a story. And the reason it's telling a story is because you have contrasting themes, you have contrasting colors, and it goes on and it slowly but surely builds to a climax. So there's a big difference between a so-so and just a date. Not only that, he's French, and he's an extremely gracious composer, and Tchaikovsky is young Tchaikovsky. It's meant to be dramatic. You can find things like that to a degree in the music I'm playing. You still need a ballet, an orchestra, and an opera to really do it at its best. But what you'll hear in particular two long pieces, I'll even begin with one, with Beethoven Sonata, which more than almost any other sonata that he wrote for piano, tells a story. Les Adieux Sonata, which in German is Les Bavaux, which means farewell. And he's literally telling a story. And the story is that he's separated from his benefactor and his dearest friend, the Archduke Rudolph. So you have a first movement where he's saying farewell. Second movement where he's away, there's an absence. The third movement, the happy movement, where they come back. Now, only add this much. I don't need to get too tactical, but you all know clearly that's a motive that goes on forever. He says, thus fate knocks on the door. Here, the piece begins like this, which is Les Bavaux. Sounds pretty simple, right? But what Beethoven does already is this. That's a horn call. He's already telling you that there are horns waiting outside in a carriage for the Archduke to leave. Not only that, though, he does this. It's a so-called deceptive cadence, and then he goes on. There's nothing happy about that. The harmonies are very mysterious and chromatic. So Beethoven is telling a story. You're going to find that theme coming back later, what you call a second theme. It's going to be there again. What you'll have in the slow movement is not two people, because in the first movement, the very end of the moving ends with the two of them almost embracing. They're going So you hear the embrace. Beethoven is using all these images to create that picture. Slow movement, only Beethoven, he's alone, he's certainly not happy. In the middle, he's going to go back to that. Like a little memory, the last movement, nothing but happy, but with horn calls. And at the middle of the piece, all of a sudden, it's not just two people embracing in happiness, but three of you. So he's doing what Chopin is going to do later. He's using Bach counterpoint to show you how to weave a painting and weave a picture. So to me, it's both a picture and a story. I'll let you decide further. I think one detail for those of you who know my hearing, I'll have to adjust slightly. Okay. After all that talk, here's the Beethoven Sonata. next two pieces are by a wonderful composer and a dear friend of mine, John McDonald. I've known him and he's helped me with recordings for more than 10 years. And a year ago, a recording of mine of all of his piano music came out. These two pieces are part of that recording. And this one, number one, is hard to play. Number two, it's a little hard to talk about. The title, Variants on Jim Wilson's Lantern Melody, needs a little explaining. Variance is not difficult. That means variations, like so many different pieces. But Jim Wilson was a friend of his and a poet and a musician who was fascinated with exotic rhythms. And lantern is a word for a rhythm and a shape, meaning that there are poems that can be based on a lantern rhythm, which consists of this: one syllable, two syllables, three syllables, four syllables, one, like this. The whole poem is going to be based on that, much like I am the pentameter verse. Now, what John is doing is he's making music out of it, and there's more than just a little bit. You can begin with a melody, much like Beethoven began with. John begins with. He's going to go on with about 10 variants, running and racing all over the keyboard, but more than that, I'll just introduce you to the fact that John is younger than me. It's modern music, so the harmonies are not particularly sweet. It's not like sometimes the Swan. If you hear this, it's a little bit harsh, but I like it, and I hope some of you will like it. But I care that you hear the unity, that rhythm is always there, number one. Number two, hear the variations. And as I say, I'll be a teacher for a second. Some of the best pieces of music, and again, if I talk nostalgia, as soon as I started studying with my great teacher, Louis Martin, the first piece he told me that I needed to play was Beethoven 32 Variations. That's what all advanced students learn. It begins like this. Then all of a sudden, I don't know if I can still play it. What you're gonna hear is, that's all, I'm not playing more, that's all it takes. But there are 32 of those variations. Bach did the same with 32 variations. Things get a little tougher, but the point I'm making is that it might sound far out and avant-garde, but John is using a device that's been around centuries and is still very popular. This is the second piece of John McDonald called Monet's Anguish. He, in his program notes, describes what he means. Monet was a great French Impressionist painter, turn of the century and a little beyond. And when you think of Monet, you think of somebody blithely tiptoeing through the tulips or something like that. And yet, John was writing music for a film biography of Monet, and as with so many, he had a pretty tragic life. He had to bear with the fact that his wife, his daughter, died at a young age. And he also was finishing all his water lilies when World War I erupted. Now, all it means is that what John is trying to do, and you tell me, does this make it a picture or a story? The music is commenting on his life. First, what you hear is a French culture. French culture means a wonderful contemporary of Monet, Eric Satie, the composer. You probably know his works. As you know, Pity. There are three of them. You have that rhythm which makes it motionless, which means to me Satie is neither a picture or certainly not a story. What John is doing is he's using the third of the three Je me Pity. He's using this rhythm and this melody. That Debussy orchestrated in a wonderful way. You begin with that peaceful elegance. It doesn't take too long before dissonance creeps in, rhythmic instability, and by the end, you hear all the ominous forecomings of a war. That's the story, am I right? Story, not picture. It's a little tricky to me, but the music is worth hearing regardless. You know who Roger Hannay was. His ashes are he's buried in the cemetery at Maple Grove. I'll only describe briefly the title of the piece the subtitle Recollections of Central City. Central City was an artist colony way out west in Wyoming or Utah, and Hannay went there for a year. I think in 1958 he was composer in residence, and he was very elated because it was like a freeing of his spirit. He'd spent his whole life on the East Coast around a little too much avant-garde music, and so here he was able to feel free to do things that were simple, crude, and physical. And that's what he writes about. That's what you'll hear. You can find in it music like the Vertigroupe, the Grand Canyon Suite. And one thing that occurred to me a few weeks ago, there's a movie that was famous around the same time that he wrote this, The Misfits. And that's a movie that's famous partly because it was the last film of Clark Gable and Marilyn Monroe, but there's a very touching scene where Marilyn Monroe, finally, she's out west, she finally sees all the Great Plains and all the mountain tops, and her eyes are open wide. It's like she's never seen anything. And that's what you're going to hear in this, these kind of empty chords. And it's also like Aaron Copland's fanfare for the common man, which is very much American music. And that's enough said. It's not easy. It's got a little bit of jazz coming in it. But welcome to it. Debussy wrote 24 preludes, like Bach wrote 24 preludes, Chopin wrote 24 preludes, 24 is a magic number. The two, which I'm playing, are both pretty easily described as images, and he helped because he put titles on them. If you hear the word Ondine, maybe some of you know that's French for mermaid. It's like a sea creature, a gorgeous female that entices sailors, things like that. And the only thing I can add to swans on the lake, the triple meter, you have them. The same triple meter in the Debussy, but what you have is you have enticement when you hear. It's like she's going like that to you. And also, much as in other pieces, when I talked about the variant in John McDonald's piece, everything you're going to have is a variation on this theme. You'll hear. Slower with a beautiful harmony, and later. So, variations on a theme, very, very much an image. The second one took me a while to know. Anacapri is like a mountainous region in southern Italy near Naples. Debussy obviously went there, he had money, he traveled. And what he's simply describing is a landscape. So good, it's an image. And he's describing the landscape by playing popular tunes. When he does popular peasant songs, and he sets them in a way that Debussy alone is capable of, with beautiful harmonies. It's as French as you can get, and that's pretty much all I need to say. The music speaks for itself. Okay, James Ritchie, another wonderful composer, another friend of mine, a recording that I made of his music will be coming out on Albany Records in a couple of months. And the funny thing is that the album cover of the record is all abstract art. But to me, Jim Ritchie's music is far from abstract. It looks backward, it's romantic, and it also has all the characters that modern American music can have. In this case, you have a waltz and you have a nocturne. You think the word nocturne, you definitely think Chopin. And to me, I think this one, C minor. For his grandmother. There's a beautiful element of intimacy and also a little sense of fatalism in his piece, but it is nothing but free, and the harmonies to me are tonal harmonies. Waltz is like every other composer's waltzes, but it's also remarkably different. When you hear I hear this. I don't even remember who is that. Is that Strauss or is that whoever? All it means is that what Jim is doing is he's making use, and again, the crucial word, variation. If you hear this, those are tonal harmonic chords, and his whole piece is going to be based on variations or this. So like all of these composers, that's like what you call unity within variation. So that's all you need to know. You'll hear both the triple meter and you'll hear the hemiola, meaning one. That's part of almost every good waltz. That's all you need to know with the two Jim Ritchie pieces. don't want to make any technical academic pronouncements. I could talk about how it's every bit as much variation in its themes as all the other pieces I'm saying, and I could talk about the fact that the form is almost a sonata form, but the music, number one, it's one of the last things he ever wrote. He was utterly free. It's really like a personal life story that he's writing. He's near death. He doesn't particularly care if anyone is going to hear that is proper and neat. He's writing what he likes, and he's also making it as hard as you can make it for everyone else. So treat it as just one of the treasures of the piano repertoire. And wish me luck in my performance. Thank you.